evening. I appreciate you being here this evening. The title of our program tonight is called The Top 10 Killer Foods. This is the fourth presentation we're giving in 2009. We have 11 presentations altogether. This is the seventh year I've been giving presentations. Every year we change them and make them better and try to facilitate you more and more. I appreciate you being here. It takes a lot of time. It's sunny outside. You know in Squim when it's sunny we sort of go brain dead. But then also when it's, it's raining, we sort of do that. When it's snowing, we sort of do that. And if it's windy, we can't go out for that either. But anyway, thanks for coming. I really appreciate that, and I think that you'll appreciate your time here. We have a lot to do this evening. We have a lot to talk about. I want to emphasize before I even start about the top 10 killer foods that my emphasis in my philosophy is not about what to take out of your diet. It's not about subtracting. We're not focusing on subtraction. We're focusing on addition. What do you get to add to your day? What do you get to add to your life? And everybody knows what are the best foods for you, what are our health heroes and weight warriors, what are those foods? Fruits and vegetables. So that's really what I'm all about, is really filling up on those and eat predominantly those in your day. And then the other things sort of take care of themselves. Well, tonight we're going to talk about the other things so I can get them out of the way. And then we'll talk about the more positive things during the other different classes. And I realize that you're not going to leave tonight and say, well, I am not going to eat sugar anymore, I'm not going to have oil anymore, I'm not going to have salt anymore, I'm not going to have chocolate anymore, I'm not going to have pastries anymore, I'm not going to have meat anymore, I'm not going to have dairy anymore, and I'm certainly not going to have chocolate anymore. I do not expect that of you, and you should not expect that of yourself either. It's all about progress, not perfection. Why? Because we're people. And as people, it's all about progress, not perfection. And the reason why we're here tonight really is to what? It's just progress. It's just to learn. It's to just build up a base of information. It's just to call forth the greatness in each other. It's just not me standing up here and going wah, 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 wah at you, is it? It's really an energy exchange. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be effective, and you wouldn't be here and you wouldn't be effective either. So it's important that we work together on trying to get better and better and call forth the greatness in one another. It's cute, isn't he? When we are born, our health, in most cases, is like a great big bright light bulb. We are born with the gift of health. And somehow, over the years and over time, what happens? Our light bulb gets dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, and we really hardly notice it. And then sometimes we're gone, just like that, and sometimes we do get symptoms, and then we really do have some issues. So what happens? And does our light bulb get dimmer too quickly? In the United States, are we doing something wrong? Maybe we need to look at that and address that. And no, maybe we cannot change the whole United States of America, but maybe we can do something about ourselves. That's all we have to do something about ourselves. And as we do something about ourselves, then we're able to shine our light bulbs on other people just by being exactly who we are, by doing nothing else, because we were born like big light bulbs. It's just over time it gets dimmer. So why not do what we can do in order for us to shine our bright lights on the world? And really, that is why you're here. It's an incredible thing, and thank yourself. And appreciate yourself for taking the time and the energy to be at something like this, because this is what it's really all about, isn't it? This. Trying to be the best people we can be, just because we want to be. And we were born with that gift. So it's important that we take advantage of that gift and appreciate that gift and be all that we can be, and it takes time to learn how to do that when we're not taught that in this country. I'm going to start right off with what I call the 5 deadly whites. Might as well get real serious really fast, right? There are different foods that I call the top 10 killer foods, and at the end of the night, I'm going to pass you out, unless you already have it, I don't know. I don't think you have it. I'm going to pass you out what I call a top 10 killer food scorecard So then you can kind of look for yourself and take a look, see what kind of those foods you're eating. And just realize that they might not be the best choices. They might be your choices. They might not be the best. You might not decide to do anything with the information. Once you get it, that's okay. Just start collecting the information and see what your brain does, basically. The 5 deadly whites. What that means is just look at our foods and think about the whites. I'm not talking about white potatoes. White potatoes are actually good for you. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about, can you see? White rice, white flour, white salt, white sugar, and what I call white oil, refined oils, including olive oil. Olive oil is the same as any other oil. It adds fat to your fat. It doesn't give you any nutrition. It adds fat to your fat. Is that something that we really want? I don't want any more fat to my fat. Do you? Maybe not. So olive oil, remember, is a choice, but it's not something that is good for you, and that's a hard thing for us to digest, literally, because we're told now what? That olive oil is a good choice. Olive oil is not a good choice. It has more calories than butter and has saturated fat in it as well. But you don't hear those kinds of things. But anyway, so there you got white rice, white flour, white salt, white sugar, and white oil. No questions, please. We'll do them at the end.
I have a question.
No questions, please.
Okay.
Thank you. We have refined grains first. Refined grains. Those are the whites. What happened back in the 1800s when we got really sophisticated in our machinery and the way we process things? We made it really easy to refine things. So the grain comes from the field, and then it's processed, and it turns into what? Breads. They literally strip everything off the whole grain, process it, make it into a bread, and then add what? All the chemicals back in, thinking that that is going to take the place of the whole grain. So we started getting really sophisticated at that, and we became whiter and whiter in everything. Because what did it do? It spoke to our palates. It tasted better. I mean, it does taste better. White tastes better than wheat to most of our tongues until we change, basically. But that's how most of us were raised. I wasn't raised like that, actually. My mother wouldn't allow a white bread in the house, but that's pretty unusual, actually. So one of the things that happened is we started refining things. Well, when you refine things, what happens? You lose the nutrition. You don't lose the calories, though. You lose the nutrition. So here you go. You have refined grains. We're talking bread. But most bread, even brown bread, is what I call brown-colored white bread. Brown-colored white bread. If something says wheat flour on it, it doesn't mean it's whole wheat flour. It means it's wheat flour. Bread is a processed food. It's not a whole grain ever. Because what happens is they fracture the grain somewhere from the field, and they pulverize it and do whatever they do to it, and they make it into this flour. So even homemade bread that's made from flour is a fractured grain. It's not a whole grain. Whole grain, when I talk about whole grains in my plan, I'm talking about whole oats and whole rice. It's not breads. I think that's an important distinction. What's the matter with refined grains? It's pretty simple. Poor nutrition. Because there's poor nutrients in whole grains, we overeat them. It's really easy to eat white things, isn't it? Especially when it has other white things in it. Because a lot of the white things hang out together. It's a gang. So they do the white flour and the white flour and the salt and the sugar and the oil. Bingo, bango. And then you throw chocolate in there. You got it, right? So it contributes to us overeating because we're not getting good nutrients. So what do? We tend to overeat. There's no fiber. We'll talk about fiber in a little bit. There's a bunch of chemicals. You can't tell me that those chemicals take the place of real food. Mucus making, what that means is when you have foods like that, they make us sniff a lot. They build up excess mucus because mucus is the way your body gets rid of toxins. So we build up extra mucus. They're calcium robbers. So what that means is refined grains as well as the other whites, what it does is what? Robs calcium from your bones. So it contributes to osteoporosis. Not to mention hypoglycemia, glycemia, and also diabetes. So because those white things go into your bloodstream so quickly and really bombard your pancreas, and then your pancreas has to shoot out insulin, and you keep doing that day after day after day after day for 50 or 60 years, what happens? Well, we wear out, we wear down. So that's one of the whites, of the refined grains. What's the big deal about fiber? I think we know, but I think it's just to remind us, it stimulates the intestinal walls, and it acts as an intestinal broom. So it's really important that we have this fiber. And where does fiber come from? Fruits and vegetables, whole things. As soon as it's fractured, as soon as it's processed, as soon as it's refined, we don't have the fiber anymore. So it's really important for the passage of their food. And our bowels, if we're really working at our best, they should really move not once every 3 days, 2 to 3 times a day. It also prevents fermenting and rotting in your guts. It really helps do what? Clean out your system so we're not susceptible to diseases. It also, those are just 2 things, it also promotes the good bacteria in our digestive system, which we need. It's also, anytime you get something that has a lot of fiber in it, I'm talking about natural fiber, you are getting what? It comes packed with the nutrients that you need. Look at the fruits and vegetables. It comes packed with the nutrients that you need. It also lowers our cholesterol. It has something to do with our cholesterol. It creates more hormone balance in your system. The more fiber you eat, the less susceptible you are to getting breast cancer. And I'm sure it's not because of just the fiber. You just can't separate the fiber from what? The nutrition in the fruits and vegetables. So it just shows you the fruits and vegetables are our powerhouses when it comes to health. And when it comes to our digestion, when it comes to energy, that's what we really need to concentrate on, our fruits and vegetables. And of course, anything that has all that fiber, they're also our disease warriors. Let's talk about salt for a second. Salt, I just got this out of the paper yesterday, USA Today. Most adults don't heed salt warnings. The salt thing is all over the place. Do we listen? I don't think so. You know, salt's in all our processed food. Salt comes from the salt shaker, but only 15% of the salt we get comes from the salt shaker. Most of it comes from breads and processed foods, and also the meat and dairy. So we have to pay attention to this. And they say that the average adult consumes 35 milligrams of salt. Now, when I'm saying salt, I'm talking about the sodium chloride that we get out of the salt shaker that is added to so many things. That's the poison, and it is a poison. I'm not talking about the natural sodium in fruits and vegetables. And yes, we need natural sodium, but we don't need any more than 300 milligrams, no more than 300. They're saying that we get 3,500 milligrams of sodium or sodium chloride, I say, a day. 3,500 on an average. But they also say this, that an adult should have no more than 2,300 milligrams of sodium chloride. We should have 0. 0. Ideally 0. Because salt is deadly. And it really creates a lot of different problems. I don't think we really realize. But these are the kinds of things that it does create in us. It contributes to hypertension. How many people have hypertension and really, sometimes they're really conscientious about the salt shaker, I find, but they don't have any idea how much salt is in all the foods that they're eating. And you just see it on this little tiny label and a little bit of sodium here, so we don't think much about it. But the salt is a killer in itself. It makes your blood vessels inflexible, and as soon as your blood vessels become inflexible, guess what? Your heart has to work harder. We're talking about the walls. It does a lot of different things, but salt is one of our, top 10 killer foods. So it creates the perfect environment for heart disease, hypertension, heart disease, strokes, obesity. 1 ounce of salt pulls in 3 quarts of water in your body. 1 ounce of salt pulls in 3 quarts of water, or 6 pounds. 6 pounds. If every one of you who are not doing this already, if you decided to eliminate one thing, try salt. Your weight's going to go down that fast. That's how incredibly powerful it is. It has to do with osteoporosis. Any kind of food that makes your body more acid, and this is a little bit complicated, but really not. Our cancer lives in an acid environment. Osteoporosis is caused by an acid environment. Why? If you remember your chemistry, trust me, I really don't, but I've read enough about it. If your body is more acid, and I don't know if you've read about this a little bit, but if your body's more acid, then it's not supposed to be. Your body doesn't want to be acid because that's what contributes to all the diseases and makes us sick and all those kinds of things. So as soon as our body is acid, our body, in its wonderful wisdom, has to make the environment more alkaline. So an acid, in order for it to become more alkaline, what has to happen? You have to pull a base. And it pulls the base from the bones. And what does that happen to be? Bingo. The United States is among the top nations in the world that eats the most dairy products. We're also among the top nations in the world that gets the most osteoporosis and die from it, by the way. So it's interesting how that is. I'm going to do a whole talk on that later on down the line. But it also, salt contributes to kidney stones, asthma, stomach cancer, and 75% of it comes from breads and processed foods. And I'm just skimming the surface of all this because we're going to have a little fun later on. I don't want to spend all the time doing serious stuff. You probably can't read this back there, but I'm just going to give you an idea. We call this salt attack. One cheeseburger, 1,950 milligrams of salt. 1,950, and the ideal is what? 0. 0, 0, 0. Scrambled eggs and sausage, 1,411 milligrams of salt. One fish sandwich with cheese, 1,035. One hot dog is 880. One medium pizza, quarter medium pizza is 1,100. Half a cup of canned veggies. Canned veggies, interesting, isn't it? 265 to 485. What about canned vegetable juice? Because I'm a great juicer myself. Is that right? Yes. That's 450 to 555 milligrams of salt. Is that worth it? I think not. A quarter cup of spaghetti sauce. You think you're doing a good job getting vegetarian spaghetti sauce? A quarter cup of spaghetti sauce has 375 to 831 milligrams of salt. We have no idea what's in salt. Frozen dinners are ridiculous. That's 852 to 1,650. One pickle that's hanging around on your plate when you go out to eat is 515 to 645 milligrams of salt. 3 ounces of canned tuna. So you sort of get the idea. What about 200 ounces of sliced ham? 2 ounces only, 624 to 1578. What about soup, canned soup? 1675 to 1547. You see, if you made a concerted effort to get rid of your salt, can you even imagine what it would do for your weight? Not even doing anything else. Not even worrying about the addition foods and all those things I talk about. Just worrying about the salt. It's an interesting challenge. When I go out, if I go out, the only time I have bread is if I'm out traveling and I'll have bread with dinner occasionally, once in a while. And I get really amazingly thirsty, and salt and bread now taste very salty to me. Because when I'm literally home, I never have salt in anything. So two slices of bread, anywhere from 190 to over 1,000 milligrams of salt. Just 2,000, just 2 slices of bread. It's something to be aware of. Let's go to sugar. Sugar blues. I've been interested in taking sugar out of my kids' diet ever since, well, before they were born. And if that's something I did right, that's one of the things I did right, was to take sugar out of their lives. So I was really aware of that. Wasn't so much aware of the meat and the dairy and all that other stuff. But basically, sugar can cause a lot of different things. And sugar is very addictive. Well, sugar is very addictive. And we know that, don't we? Isn't it hard to stay away from sugar? And salt's very addictive. They're both really addictive. So we have the sugar-salt thing going on. So 59 reasons why sugar ruins your health. I have a few of them here. I mean, it's interrelated with hypoglycemia and diabetes and arteriosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, hypertension, and so does salt. So and salt and sugar a lot of times go together, like with baked goods. A lot of different things have sugar and salt, both in them. Heart disease, cancer. Cancer thrives in an acid environment. So if we're eating these foods that create an acid environment, guess what? We're creating the environment that is perfect for what? Cancer growth. And all we have to do is look around us. Oh my gosh. Every day, don't we find somebody else that has cancer? It's a scary, scary, horrifying disease. Well, why do we have so much cancer? Why? It's got to be what we're doing to ourselves. It has to be what we're doing to ourselves. You know, for all the breast cancer marches and the wonderful things that women do for each other in the kinds of fundraisers, for all of that goes on, breast cancer has only gotten worse since the 60s and the 70s. It used to be 1 in 20 were diagnosed as having breast cancer. Now it's 1 in 7 or 1 in 8. That hasn't changed. That's been up there for a while, and it just kind of stays there. We're doing something wrong. We're absolutely doing something wrong. Anyway, also, sugar increases our weight, of course, and it contributes to aging. Makes our skin more inflexible. And salt contributes to aging. So here we are in this cosmetic society. Women, we're so concerned about our looks. We all are. Yet look at what we're putting into our bodies that's aging our skin. You know, we do all kinds of stuff to it. We do Botox and this stuff and whatever other stuff we do to our skin instead of taking care of it from the inside out. That's why we're aging so prematurely. It's because of what we put into our bodies and not exercise, not taking care of ourselves. Yes, we can nip and tuck and da-da-da-da-da and do what we do, but goodness, if we could start doing the right things now or have done them when we were younger, even better. It increases weight because the liver stores sugar. And by the way, they say that most Americans have an average of 30 teaspoons of sugar a day. You know, I can't believe that. Except 1 can of pop is 10 teaspoons of sugar. So if you're having 2 cans of pop, that's 20 teaspoons of sugar. And then you have whatever else we're having that has sugar in it. Bread has sugar in it, canned things have sugar in it, vegetables have sugar in it, anything processed, packaged, not to mention the stuff that we know has sugar in it. So we're getting it somewhere because that is the statistic. So I think we need to really look at that. And when you look at the sugar, it is correlated to these things, but I couldn't possibly put it on 59 reasons why sugar ruins your health. And this is in your packet. It talks about the immune system. It talks about how it affects your eyesight, hypoglycemia, acid stomach. It affects the adrenaline levels in kids, bowel disease, aging, alcoholism, tooth decay, obesity, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, arthritis, asthma, gallstone, heart disease, appendicitis, multiple sclerosis, hemorrhoids, varicose veins. We are addicted to this sugar. And if we would recognize it as an addiction, just like so much of our food is in the United States, I think that would help us to realize, okay, I have a problem with sugar. Now, what can I do to get off the problem with sugar? Number one thing, what do you think that is? Eat more fruits and vegetables. It really helps with sugar cravings. I've heard that time and time and time again with the people that I work with. And sugar comes in disguises. These are, if you look at a label, and I think I put this in your handout, if you look at a label, any of these things that a label says means it has sugar in it. I didn't even put all of them in there, I just put some of them in there. So corn syrup, lactose is milk sugar, dextrose, maltose, fructose, anything with OS on the end, OSC on the end, means it's sugar. Malt, any kind of malt, or dextrin. I didn't put any of those. So it says dextrin, that's a sugar. Fruit juice concentrates, that's a sugar. That's a refined sugar. I used to think it wasn't until I read that it was. It was very disappointing. Sucrose, any kind of syrup, glucose, that's OSC again. Anything that says no sugar added means it has sugar in it. It has to say unsweetened. So anytime it says no sugar added, like in orange juice or juices, a lot of times it'll say no sugar added, that means there's sugar in it. It's just a different form of sugar. So it actually literally has to say unsweetened to have no sugar in it. So look for that. And I think I do have it in your handout. And you're not going to remember all this. We do get it. We do have them on DVD and CD, though, if you want to take a look at it. And you can look at your handouts, and you can just start looking for yourself. And sometimes you have to look hard. I have a lot of materials in my office, so you're welcome to come down there and borrow materials and articles. Okay, here we go. We're going to the what? The white oils. I think one of the worst foods that we eat are trans fats. Trans fats means altered fat. Somehow man altered a fat. So an example of a trans fat, it's taken me about 4 years to get this. So an example of that is hydrogenated fat, which you see on a lot of labels. Not trans fat, but you'll see hydrogenated fat. That's a semi-hard oil at room temperature. What's a perfect example of that? Margarine. And they use these hydrogenated fats to make things creamy for the texture because we're so spoiled and we need a certain texture. So peanut butter, how do you think it gets that texture? Trans fats, hydrogenated fat. They think that hydrogenated and trans fats are definitely some of the most toxic substance that we eat. Very correlated to heart disease and to cancer. That's another thing. You can just start looking at the labels. If something says hydrogenated fat, don't buy it. And along with the hydrogenated fat is what? The salt, the sugar, and a lot of times the white flour. You look at the labels. You know, I've come to the conclusion, I've said this time and time again, but I've come to the conclusion that if something has a label, don't buy it. Except for the little sticky things that comes on the fruit. And I don't know how many of those little labels I've eaten. Those little sticky things that they put on all the fruit now. Though that's an okay label. But a label that's this big and has 33 different ingredients, look at the breads. 33 different ingredients. You cannot tell me that that's food. That's not food. It fills our bellies and we like it, but it's not food. So trans fats. Heated oils, even though it looks like on this poster, because at the time I didn't get it, heated oils are not trans fats. But as soon as the oil is heated, I think it's over 110 degrees, it gives out free radicals. So it's really dangerous. So anything that's an oil that's heated is really harsh on your body. Think about what we heat in oils. I'm not talking about just fried foods. What about any kind of baked good? Or any time you put oil in anything that you're making and then you cook it. So it's in a lot of our foods, heated oils. So that's something to just look at and try to use something beside the oils. And then, of course, you get the fried, the baked, the chips, and the crackers. And then you have the hydrogenated fat, trans fats, and you get the margarine and the mayonnaise and the shortening and the salad dressing and the peanut butter and the candy and anything, almost anything processed and packaged. It almost always has this in it, some kind of hydrogenated fat, trans fat, something like that. It's all over. It's just rampant. So it's something that's important to take a look at. And these are the kinds of things, and again, not everything, but kinds of the things that trans fat cause. Increase in cholesterol. Increase in, this says arterial sclerosis. It should be atherosclerosis. Do you know what atherosclerosis is? That's what causes the strokes and heart attacks and all kinds of different things that go on in the arteries and your veins in your body. What that is when you get the clogging up of the cholesterol and the fat in the arteries. And then it builds up and it sort of breaks and it scabs over. And it builds up and it breaks. It's like little pimples inside your blood vessels. And it sort of comes ahead and it breaks and it scabs up. And it does that over and over and over again until what happens? It clogs up. The little tiny vessels. I'm not talking the great big vessels like are this big in your heart. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the vessels that they cannot pick up. In the most sophisticated technology testing, they cannot pick it up in the little teeny tiny vessels. 95%, and we'll talk about this at one of our future talks, 95% of all our heart attacks are not caused by those great big vessels, you know, that they ream out and change and, you know, replumb and all that. They're caused by the little tiny vessels that we don't see because we have atherosclerosis, or this plaque that builds up in our veins and our arteries, and then it scabs up, and then it does what? It cuts off somehow the blood supply in that little tiny artery or vein, and bingo, that's when you get a stroke or heart attacks. So, having said that, trans fats increase the cholesterol in our arteries and veins. It adds to the atherosclerosis, or that plaque that builds up in our cardiovascular system. It causes cardiovascular disease, which means heart and vein and artery disease. It is directly related to cancers. It lowers our immune system. It affects our nervous system. It affects the metabolic system. What's one of the reasons why maybe some of us don't process calories the way we're supposed to? That's our metabolic system. So let's not muck about with the metabolic system. Let's contribute as much as we can to building up the system so that our body can do what it needs to do as efficiently as possible with every calorie that we get. Isn't that what we want? Yeah. So, and the cell membrane, it destroys the cell membrane. The cell membrane is really important to get rid of toxins when it's supposed to and keep in the good nutrients when it's supposed to. And it shoots holes through the cell membranes. I know this sounds really intangible, but all these things are really highly important to your health. Hang on to that. Those are the trans fats. Okay. Then you have the altered foods. Anything that goes from, like a grain, it's in the field, and then they go, and then what do? Bingo, they stick it into a cardboard box. Well, they embalm it first, and then they put chemicals in it, and they dry it all up, and then they put it into a cardboard box, and it's the stuff that we're so attached to in the morning because we just love it so much, because it has sugar and salt and milk and more sugar on it, and maybe a little fruit somewhere along. What are those cereals? Cereals have about as much nutrition as the cardboard box does. That's what we call altered food. It is a processed, refined food. A processed food is when you take corn on the cob and put it in a can. Anytime you go through processing, what happens? We lose nutrients. Now, I'm not saying that that's not an okay thing sometimes, but I am saying it's a compromise. It goes through, anytime you heat something and you put it through the processing in order to put it in a can, that's a processed food. And then we take it out of the can. Oh, we put salt in it and sometimes sugar in it. And then we take it out of the can, and then what do? We heat it up again. Whether you nuke it or whether you do it in a pan, you're heating it up again. Every time you heat up a fruit or vegetable, what happens? You're losing nutrients. So by the time we're eating it, we're getting more calories than that warrants the nutrition that we're getting from. So fresh fruit, almost always, not always, but almost always is better for you than that. Now, years ago, when we couldn't get that, and we had to make our own things and grow to our own gardens and can things, it was a wonderful thing to do, and still is to a degree, but only as to supplement our diet. It does not replace the fresh things. Refined foods are anything that you have, like the flours, and the flours that take off the shaft of the thing around the wheat berry, and anything like refined, rice is refined, preserved, and then they preserve things, and then they add all these chemicals in order so Twinkie can stay on the shelf for 15 years or some crazy thing. I don't know if that's true, but I've just been saying it for a long time. I've heard it for a long time, that the Twinkie can stay forever. Like one of my teachers had it out and kept it on the shelf forever by the window and said, you know what, don't be eating this because this is still around and it's like 6 months later. So I don't know if it's 15 years or not, but it's not something that I would ever want to eat. Man-made foods. Well, man-made foods are just chemicals. Is this where I have this? Let me show you this. Well, and then we have the junk foods, which I call the fifth food group. As it is, the meat and the dairy group, I'd rather just throw out the door. I mean, fruits and vegetables are great, but we'll call junk food the fifth food group because 50% of everything that we have in the grocery store is now considered junk, according to the U.S. government. They only have, I think the nutrition value, they have maybe 5% of the daily recommended nutrition is in junk food, 5%. 50% of everything you see in a grocery store is considered junk food. Look at anybody's cart around you. What do they have mostly? Junk food. And then, of course, along with that, they have the breads. I don't know if that's called junk or not. Then they have the breads, and then they have the cereals, and then they have the meat, and then they have the dairy. This is a recession time. This is a good time to sort of tighten up our belts, isn't it? Well, if we start eating correctly, we'd be able to do that. I'm not saying you don't have to pay money for fruits and vegetables, but if you're not eating all those other foods, can you imagine the money that you could be putting into the foods that we really need to be eating? But anyway, junk food we know is high in fat and sugar and salt and chemicals, high in calories, no nutrients. Is that worth it? And that's a choice you literally make choice by choice by choice, because that's what this is all about, isn't it? It's a matter of awareness. And then when you're having that, whatever bag, whatever it is, or chocolate or any kind of candy or chips or just, all this packaged garbage that they have, look at that and say, is it worth it? Is it worth it? And sometimes you're going to say, what the heck, I don't care. But you know what? Sometimes you're going to say, no, it's not worth it. So that's what you're after, is making a reasonable choice. Get reasonable information and then make a choice at the moment. This is an example of junk. This is a cake donut from Safeway. Cost $3.29. For what? Do you see the amount of money we spend by putting junk into our bodies to create diseases down the line? We're killing ourselves with all the money we're spending on going out and buying this junk and then eating this junk. We spend a tremendous amount of money on this junk. It's amazing what we do to ourselves. We're just not trained properly. We just have not been brought up to understand what's good for us and what's not. And we're hooked on these foods. Anyway, this is a cake donut. These are the ingredients. I'm sure you can't read it, but I'll read it to you. Enriched, unbleached wheat flour. What does that stand for? White flour, exactly. Oh, and that has niacin in it. It says iron, thiamine, mononitrate, riboflavin, folic acid, sugar, water, partially hydrogenated canola oil. Bingo, right? Glucose. What's glucose? Sugar. Soybean oil. You know, that's oil. Non-fat dry milk. Maltodextrin. What's that? Sugar, yep. Soy flour, leavening, sodium bicarbonate, sodium acid, pyrophosphate, monocalcium phosphate, egg. A lot of things are stabilizers. Potato flour, salt, cellulose gum, lecithin, potassium, artificial vanilla flavor. Is this food? Is that food? That's absolutely not food. It's something that we want to eat, maybe, but it's not food. See? Just awareness. Just creating awareness, getting more and more aware, looking at something and say, at the store, look at it and say, do I want to spend $4 on something that could end up contributing to early death? No. And then, of course, we have junk drinks. So sorry. Junk drinks, pop, soda, whatever you want to call it, soft drinks. The average American has 300 of those a year. 300. I don't have any. So someone has more than 300 because I don't have any. I mean, never. I cannot remember the last time I had it. I'm not saying that to brag. I mean, I have a lot of things I don't want to tell you that I'm not proud of. Not necessarily in the food arena. I'm really good with food. Not really good with things like marriage. So we won't talk about that. I'll talk about what I'm pretty good at, and that's the food. But I can't remember. I have no idea. No idea whatsoever the last time I had pop. Why would I want to put something like that into my body? It just does not make sense to me. So if it's something that we're hooked on and we really like it and really love it, just start looking at that and say, what is this doing for me? Why am I doing this? And why am I hooked on it? It gives you an amazing sense of power, empowerment, when you actually can make the conscious choice and say, you know what? That was okay for me then. You know, back in the 70s when you wore a certain outfit? You know the crazy outfits, and we thought we looked so cool back in the 70s or in the 80s, and then you look back at the clothes and you go, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? In fact, what was everybody thinking? So that was back then, like John Travolta days. You know, we had the Staying Alive garb on. Not that I ever looked like that, no. But anyway, that was back in the 70s and 80s. This is 2009. Our attitudes about food are back in the 70s and 80s. They were okay for then. Now they're not. They're out of style. Let's think about what we're going to add to our bodies that's really going to add to our health. But anyway, junk drinks. So you have all these juices that are junk, and then you have juice drinks that are junk, and then you have the sports drinks and the protein drinks and the milk break drinks and the caffeinated drinks and the alcohol. Goodness, and we have so many calories that are contributed from what we drink. That's another thing. Okay, think about the salt, just the salt, and get rid of the drinks. Katie, who been working with for 22 years now, she figured out one time, quite some time ago, actually years ago, probably now, that she was consuming coffee lattes this is a while ago, coffee lattes, and she was consuming an extra day of calories just from the coffee lattes. So she was getting 8 days worth of calories just because of the addition of the coffee lattes. You know, so sometimes I think we have to realize that you don't have to do everything, and you're not going to do everything. As soon as we want to do everything, then we get frustrated and we don't do anything because we get overwhelmed. And we go into overwhelm mode, then we don't do anything because it's just too confusing. So then we just go back to what we're used to. But if you could just pick out one thing, you know, do the addition thing and think about what you can add to your day, the fruits and vegetables. That's pretty simple. The other extra thing you can do, if you're ready for it, then say, what's the one thing in my life that I really don't think I need right now? I'm done with it. I know it's destructive to my body and I'm done with it. It might be the salt, it might be the sugar, it might be the oil, it might be the pop. And it could be this. Ha! Didn't think I was going to talk about that, huh? When I work with people in my 10-10 consults, I don't even talk about coffee. I don't even go there. There's enough other things to talk about. Coffee is just one of those things I tend not to touch unless somebody asks me. But the coffee drinks, by the way, do contribute a lot to the calories. Not necessarily the coffee per se, but the coffee is a drug. So call a duck a duck. Call a drug a drug. We know it's a drug. Just think about what coffee does to your body, and I have that in your handouts. What did coffee do to your body? It makes your heart beat faster. Gives you sort of a funny acid stomach, makes you anxious, makes you nervous. So it must do something to rev up your brain. Otherwise, we wouldn't be eating it. So therefore, it has to be a drug. Isn't that right? Makes your bladder work more. Now, it makes all kinds of different parts of your body work more and work harder. So does it make sense that even if you have only 1 cup of coffee a day, does it make sense that that might be over-stressing your body? Just one more added stress to the sugar, the salt, the oils, and the hydrogenated fats, all the extra things that we eat. It's one more stress. Is that something you may still choose to do? Absolutely. Just know what you're choosing. That's all. Just take a look at it and know what you're choosing. It's addictive, it's a stimulant, unstable bladder, causes indigestion, headaches, nervousness, fatigue. Yeah, it tires you out. It ruins your adrenal glands. It is absolutely, definitely related to blood pressure, high blood pressure, because it does something to blood vessels. It hardens your arteries. So does salt. So does sugar. See all those things that would sort of all go together? You have a donut and coffee. Cholesterol. It raises the cholesterol. Has anybody ever heard that coffee raises cholesterol? Probably not. But as you read more about it, you'll see that there is a correlation there. Coffee raises triglycerides. That's the fat in your blood that it causes or contributes to arteriosclerosis. That's atherosclerosis again. It contributes, therefore, to heart attacks, strokes, because this causes heart attacks and strokes. Osteoporosis makes our body very acid. So it's pulling calcium out of bones again. And it also related to rheumatoid arthritis and a couple different kinds of cancers. So you just choose. Just choose. Make choices. And sometimes you'll make good ones, and sometimes maybe not so good ones. Then there's this myth. Because people say, you know, I only have a little bit of coffee and a little bit of donuts and a little bit of pop and a little bit of pizza and a little bit of hamburger and a little bit of chicken, a little bit of mashed potatoes, and just a little bit. And we have the illusion that we eat in moderation. There's no such thing as moderation in the United States. Have you noticed? We don't eat in moderation. We eat in excess, and we eat in excess of everything, not just one thing. So when you look around and you compare us to the culture, we might have the illusion that we eat in moderation if you compare yourself to somebody else. But the bottom line is we do not eat in moderation. If we did, 80% of us wouldn't be overweight. It's interesting, my daughter Erin and I, we've been working these trade shows with the book. Where's Erin? Oh, she's out there. We've been working the trade shows with this book, and she's been just a wonderful advocate, and just it's wonderful to work with her. But she, sometimes people try to pull me into a conversation or a confrontation, whatever you want to call it, about what they do and what I do, so to speak. I'm not there to get into anything like that. I'm just there to what? Educate, elevate, to help, them understand. And the person that's talking to me is 50 or 60 or 70 or 100 pounds overweight. All that means is if it worked for them, then okay, show me that it's working for you. That's all. Obviously, something's not working, but we're such bulldogs, and we just hang on to the things that and I am too, trust me, a fierce bulldog. And we just hang on to those things. We're conditioned, and it's hard to let those things go, basically. But as you start opening your mind and expanding your mind, it's just incredibly amazing what we've been doing to our bodies all these years and didn't know it. So therefore, it's hard to turn things around. And this is proof that the Americans don't eat in moderation. 51% of what we eat in America is refined or processed. Of the calories consumed, 51% of the calories consumed is refined or processed. 42% is dairy or animal products. 7% fresh fruits and vegetables. Or no, just fruits and vegetables, not even fresh. Fruits and vegetables. Is that moderation? That's not moderation. 7%, half of the 7% is eaten, consumed in potatoes in the form of French fries and potato chips. That's not moderation. This is in Joel Fuhrman's book. I didn't come up with this. So when you're talking about, what's interesting too is that, as I said, everything sort of hangs together. All these, the whites and the oils and the salt and the sugar and the coffee, it all sort of together. So if you just avoid those products where they all come in, we're doing so much better. So I suggest you follow my plan, which is add, stop, and wiggle. So you add the best foods for you first. Don't say that you're never, ever, ever going to eat these foods again, because you will. And then that sets you up for failure. But do say, wake up in the morning and say, what do I get to eat today? What do I get to add to my body today that is healthy for me, can give me energy, and help create joy, and help me think clearly, and help give me emotional stability, help me be more spiritual because you can be a better person? What do I get to add today? Well, how about fruits and vegetables? That sounds pretty reasonable. Does not sound unreasonable. So let's add that first. Is it easy? I don't know. It sounds easy, doesn't it? Is it easy? Carol, is it easy?
No.
It's not easy. Katie, is it easy?
No.
No. Katie has been working with me for a long time, poor thing. And one of the things she has discovered in the last while, it tells you how long it takes sometimes. One of the things she discovered in the last while, I think she probably already knew this, but she really knows it now, that the key for her is planning and preparation. So she works full time, and on Sundays now she goes shopping, and then she plans and prepares everything. So she washes her salad greens several days ahead of time, so they're all washed. And so when she's making her salad, she can make it in like 10 minutes. What happens if Katie doesn't do that? Then she starts eating those things that are not the good for you foods, not the best for you foods. So the planning and prepping is huge, huge contributor. So and then you become conscious of stopping when your brain tells you you're full. Ask yourself, does this food feed me or deplete me? Literally, when you're shopping, you're getting the things you always get. Literally, look at this food and say, does this food feed me or does this food deplete me? And make a choice. And then be responsible for that choice and for the consequences of that choice. What will happen is your awareness opens up, and as your awareness opens up, then maybe you'll start making a choice that you wouldn't have made before. You just start working with that. Give yourself grace and be patient with yourself and just allow yourself to always have a choice, but after a while, you might make a better choice for your health. And the third thing is wiggle room. I'm going to read a letter. Wiggle room means, what does it mean? It just means give yourself flexibility. 80% of the time when you're home and things are normal, make good choices. 20% of the time, don't worry about it. You know, just wiggle. I'm going to read this letter that I just got last night, actually. And I'm reading it because it just takes time. We're so conditioned. It just takes time. And we don't have enough patience and grace with ourselves. When you're making any major change in your life, it takes time. When you're trying to work through a marriage, it takes time. When you're trying to raise kids, it takes time. When you're getting a college education, it takes time. When you're learning a new language, it takes time. Everything in life, when you're doing something and doing it well, learning a craft, mastering how to build a house, learning a profession, everything takes time. Why do we think that it's not going to take time to change the way we eat when we've been eating like that since zero? We've been eating like that for 30, 40, 50, and 60 years. Just give yourself grace. It just takes time. It's about progress, not perfection. Progress, not perfection. So I'll read this letter. Hi, Dr. Leslie. As you know, my journey the past 4 years, neon sign, 4 years, and making decisions to change my eating habits has been long, but not without victory. There were many times I wondered why I was not losing weight. Even though I was making changes in my diet to one of vegetables, fruits, and whole grains, exercising 5 to 6 days a week. I must admit, though, I was allowing too much wiggle moments. Wiggling too much, eating this and wiggling too much and thinking we're not wiggling too much. Then after several months of observation on what I was doing to sabotage myself, taking full responsibility for yourself, not blaming anybody else. That's important. Take full responsibility for yourself and get your intentions clear. And women, we like to blame our husbands. I don't have a husband to blame, so I'm sort of lost. But we like to blame our husbands. The bottom line is this: most men are good people. If we get our own intentions clear, they'll change with you. If only by default, because probably you're the one that's making the food. So you get your own intentions clear, stop blaming our husbands. It's amazing what you can change around you without doing hardly anything. So anyway, then after several months of observation of what I was doing to sabotage myself, sometimes some family members, I came to the conclusion that all of the so-called excuses I had been using over the years to justify those deserved treats were just that, excuses. I have been studying nutrition for over 20 years, educating myself, applying many techniques, yet only half-heartedly. It was time to soul search as to the whys. Why? I know the information, what to do, how to do it, yet stopped in midstream, reverted back to my old eating habits why I felt like such a failure. Why does that happen? It happens because we're conditioned to eating certain foods. When I felt I was letting myself down, I started beating myself up. Anybody do that? Yeah, every day. Every time. This had to stop. It wasn't until I made my decision to be totally committed to myself and my personal eating plan that things turned around. And I mean fast. Everything began to click with me. So you see what happened? She took responsibility for herself, then she made the commitment to herself, and what happened? Boom, whatever. Timing. How does it happen for one person at one time? I don't know, but it's a timing. And we just have to go through a lot of internal work, right? We have to go through the internal process. No matter what we look on the outside, it doesn't matter that I look thin. That's not important. What matters is the inner stuff we have to go through in order to lose, if you happen to have layers, in order to lose your inner layers, in order to lose the outer layers. It's the inside stuff. That's what takes so much time. On top of that, we're addicted to these foods because we've been eating them since we were 0 years old. You see? It's tough. It's probably the toughest thing you'll do in your life is to change your eating habits. Everything began to click with me. I sat down with my husband, Dell. Important point, women, sit down with your husbands and talk to them about your now clear intentions. And ask him if he would support me in this experiment with our eating plan for only 12 days. I don't know why, it just makes me emotional, so sorry. I told him that we could do anything together for 12 days. See? So he's trying to work together on this thing because husbands, it's so important that we work together on this because it's a tough thing. He agreed. I went into action, cleaned out the kitchen and the pantry of all foods that had sugar, white flour. I swear to you, she didn't have my stuff on hand at that minute. Sugar, white flour, fats, and oils of all kinds. All meats, poultry, fish, and all dairy. What's left to eat? Yeah. And that's our next talk, what's left to eat. I then made a list of all foods that did not have any of those ingredients. No more deplete me foods. One of my terminology I use in the book. For the first few days, it was a little time consuming to get set up and begin. I did a few recipes of cooked and steamed vegetables or vegetable dishes that we could rotate each week. But mostly we stuck to fresh fruits and vegetables and grains. Within 5 days, my husband, and I've been following them for a long time, her husband was not on board at first, but she was not on board either. Important point. Within 5 days, my husband told me he was feeling so good and felt like he was losing weight too. At first, I was afraid to get on the scale. Doesn't that sound familiar? Because I had been so disappointed so many times in the past. But I got on the scale. The 6th day, to my surprise, I was down 4 pounds. 6 days, 4 pounds. You get clear? Look what happens. We were enjoying each day, and each day brought a new adventure in eating. By the end of the 12 days, I had lost a total of 8.5 pounds, 2 inches off my waist, and dropped 1 dress size. 12 days. I talk about 90 days. We're talking about 12 days. It all began with a decision that I did not want to be a part of the standard American diet masses. Why do we want to be a part of the masses? You're different. You're different than them because you're here. You're different. So hang on to the difference. And you've got to be different to make that difference. You've got to be different to make a difference. Don't be a part of them. You know, even though it's hard. It's hard to be different. It's hard to be unique in your family. It's hard to stand up to people that come to your house because we like that food. It's really hard. But you cannot make a difference with your life unless you are different. And what's the point of being here if we don't make a difference? What is the point of being on this planet if you don't make a difference? And the only way you can make that difference, the only way at all, is if you're different. And because you were born into the unique person that you are automatically different. Do we get it? But then we just fall into this mass mentality, do what everybody else says, listen to the commercials, eat the garbage that everybody else eats, have no energy, have no purpose anymore because we're so tired, it's hard for us to get up in the morning out of the bed, and then we're wondering what's going on here when we get diagnosed with cancer, diabetes, strokes, heart attacks, and why our loved ones drop around us like flies. So it's really time for you to be warriors because you're here. You to be warriors and be the different, unique, wonderful, brilliant person that you are so that you can shine that bright light bulb on the world and really start illuminating other people's eyes and raise their level of awareness. You have a big responsibility. It's a gift, but it's also a responsibility. And it's not easy, but it's worth it. It's for nothing. It's more rewarding. That if you can change yourself and you can make positive changes in one person's life and extend their life or make their life better in some ways, then it's worth it. Your life is now worth it. It all began with a decision I did not want to be part of the standard American masses, declining in health as I age, and ending up in a nursing home and not having the quality of life that I know I can have. I decided to love myself and strive to be all I could be in the healthiest state I could possibly achieve. Everything after this decision was easy. Easy. I love the way we eat, and we don't miss anything. How could you miss anything? Look at what life she's brought into her life. In fact, yesterday my husband told me that he loves eating this way so much he never ever wants to return back to our old way of eating. Isn't that a great statement? Making the decision to change completely was the hard part. Every day is easy now, and I am still getting results. But this time it is different. I don't see this change as a diet, a short-term plan, but as a lifestyle to be lived each day the rest of my life. And that's exciting to me. We put so much emphasis and effort into those foods that are so bad for us. It's almost like we're empty inside, and that gives us love and joy and emotional support and all the things we get from eating chocolate and drinking coffee and drinking alcohol and all the junk that we drink. Listen to this statement. one more time, if I can find it. And that's exciting to me. I don't see this change as a diet, a short-term plan, but as a lifestyle to be lived each day the rest of my life. And that's exciting to me. Motivation, conviction, and determination are high for the first time. I've come a long way, baby. Thank you, Dr. Leslie, for all your love and encouragement. You never gave up on me. And I have to say back to her, she never gave up on her. That's more important than me not giving up on her. She never gave up on her, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. You are a true blessing to me and to many. I pray that you will continue to do your passion and help more people become all they can be. Thank you, Katie and Carrie and all your staff who do so much to support you, your loyal supporter and friend forever. Carol Yeda, and Carol Yeda is here tonight, right, with a green sweater. Stand, just come up here, Carol, for a minute. Carol, just from you. I know it's getting late, but I just haven't introduced Carol. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Is she amazing, or what? So I asked her if I could please read this, and she graciously said that, and she doesn't know that I would ask her to come up. But why don't you just say a couple things, Carol, and then I'm sure you don't mind.
You said it all. Well, 4 years, I thought I would never get through it, but coming to all the lectures, I came for a whole year and then part of the next year, and just hearing it over and over again, take baby steps, take baby steps. And I was taking so many baby steps that finally I decided I had to just make the decision and jump right in and let everything else go. So I did, and I haven't looked back.
Oh,
so,
Carol,
and you know, I don't want to do this, but woo! Look at this! I need to go shopping pretty soon.
I call these in my office droopy drawers.
Yeah, and they're drooping, and that's
drawer
just
club.
in 1 month. I mean, I started March 2nd, and so within a month. So the 8.5 pounds, I've hit the 10-pound mark now. And so it's not about the weight anymore. It's about how I'm feeling and the health that I'm doing for myself for the long term. And
Isn't it nice to be free of...
It is. That was, I really wanted to get free of that burden of just that merry-go-round of thinking, you know, okay, what am I eating? What am not losing weight, not losing weight. And so I thought, okay, that I want to let go of for good. And so just the healthy eating and what Dr. Leslie promotes is great. And just get on track and do your baby steps, and you'll eventually get there. And the thinking will change as you go along. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you. Okay, with that, I want to thank you for coming this evening. You cannot leave after I get done. Just stay a couple more minutes because I have things. I just have something I want to talk to you about. I so appreciate you being here. And the bottom line is this: you did not come here to be the expert. You're not the expert. You're something way beyond the expert. You're the visionary. I could not say this often enough. You're the visionary. You can see the possibilities. You can see the possibilities for yourself, or you wouldn't be here. You can see the possibilities for yourself. You can see the possibilities for your family and your community and for the planet. That's why you're here. Now, it's up to you to surround yourself with the information, which is what you're doing tonight. Surround yourself with the information, the people, the real key people in your life that can help you so that you can transform the possibility into reality. As you're doing that, your light gets brighter and brighter because you're burning through the layers inside of you. And as you do that, the layers on the outside come off and you become the brightest, biggest light bulb that you were meant to be. And that's when you can really shine your brilliance on the world and lead the way. Thank you.